On your left, we have my brand new 2021 Mach 1.
And on your right, we have my 2017 ZL1.
So for $55,000, what is the best daily?
We're gonna find out.
ZL1. Jesus. All right. So one common theme that you'll see between both of these cars is this is not the most radical version of each you can get. This is the Camaro ZL1, it is not the 1LE. Similarly, this is the Mach 1 without the handling package. So you can get these cars more track equipped, but for daily drivers, that is not what we want. So although you may consider this a unique matchup, we feel that these two cars are very evenly matched for the ideal daily driver. In my corner, I think this has the brand new technology and the creature comforts that you want in a daily. Kelly, what do you think?
More power, baby.
So Kelly, what drew you to this 2017 ZL1? Why did you pick this car versus say something else?
So we for a fun daily, and one of the things I was looking at was a GT350, and honestly, when I drove it, it just didn't seem like the right suspension for something every day. So this used 2017 popped up, and after driving it, honestly, it's super comfy. There's a lot of power in every single portion of the range. And it was just really fun to drive. Under the hood here we have the LT4 6.2 liter V8, which is factory supercharged. So compared to Bill's car, that's about 170 more horsepower and a lot more torque.
So in your opinion, and I know this is somewhat subjective, but what do you think about the styling of the ZL1?
On 4, we looked at it. I was kind of against the Camaro. I know the Chevy interiors weren't always my favorite, but coming to see this one in person and looking at the styling, I love the white, but just the interior impressed me a lot more than I thought it was going to. I love the screen. I love the wheel. Everything about the inside is pretty fun. So that honestly kind of sold me on it, but mostly the driving experience is the best part.
So very similar to the Mach 1, this has magnetic ride and it has selectable driving modes. So you can range between, I think, touring all the way to track. There's a snow and wet mode. So it's very nice where you can kind of tailor it to the type of driving you want to do that day. If you're going to be cruising on the freeway for a long period of time, you can throw it in touring. It'll soften everything up. But if you want to hit these twisty roads like we're about to in a second, you can throw it into sport or track mode and you'll get a much better steering and suspension response.
All right, Bill, why did we buy the Mach 1?
So for me, this is my 5th Mustang and actually my 2nd Coyote. Now I had driven GT350s before and that was something that I considered. But honestly, what happened was after driving that car, I felt it was just too harsh for a daily driver. It would tram line on the freeway. It was rough over bumps. So I got really excited when the Mach 1 came out because I felt like that could be a good compromise between a regular base Coyote GT and the much more track-oriented GT350.
Tell me about the specific features that you got with your Mach 1.
Sure. So the big thing for me after owning a previous 2013 5.0 with the MT82 transmission was the upgraded Tremec transmission found in the GT350. I had plenty of issues with my 2013, specifically with that transmission, and actually had it replaced twice under warranty. So while I love the Coyote platform, I was not in love with the transmission. The other features that I like after driving cars like Kelly's are the magnetic ride. Being able to adjust not only the steering feel, but the suspension on the fly is a huge benefit to a daily driver. So we're gonna go fire these things up. We're gonna let you hear the engine, let you hear the exhaust, take it up on some back roads and just give you a full driving experience of how this is on some twisties. And then we'll talk about some of the creature comforts and as well as maybe some things we don't like so much and let you decide what's the best daily for you. ZL1. Jesus. All right. Oh my gosh. I'm trying to do this with my arm and it's not super easy. Right off the bat is a handful. So I'm going to let Kelly give you the rundown on why she chose this car, her thoughts on a daily driver, and then also kind of on these back roads that we're on right now.
Yeah, so as soon as I test drove this car, the first thing that I noticed was, although it felt very stiff, it still was pretty comfortable on the ride. And the other thing is the stock shifter is actually pretty nice. I don't know if I'll have to replace it. Maybe a shorter throw one might be in the future, but it really drives well right out of the box. The steering is nice and tight. The suspension is tight, but over bumps it's not that bad. And really just the power anywhere, anytime is pretty great.
So how does the steering feel compare to the Shelby GT350 that you drove?
So this one I think is much more like a daily. It is very tight. You can definitely feel it around the turns, but it doesn't really give you a ton of road feedback. You don't have that feeling that the car is seeking or the wheels are getting stuck kind of in those ruts on the road. It really just has a nice smooth feel, but it still feels like you're in a little bit of a race car, which is kind of what I was looking for. So that coupled with the suspension, you know, that really was why I chose this car for a good daily.
So one thing that I think about this car, of course we're going around a bend, I'm trying to hold it still. One thing that I thought was surprising about this car was honestly like the materials on the inside. So I had been in like rental car Mustangs, rental car Camaros, V6 Camaros before, and it was just not a pleasant experience. But in this car, it's quite nice. You've got the Alcantara, kind of like that suede feel, and it's all over the dash, it's on the steering wheel, it's on the door pads. It's a really nice place.
So one of my favorite things that I have now, and I don't know if I could go without it, having had it for so long, is the heads-up display. So that, I think, is one of the biggest upgrades in this car that the Mach 1 does not have. It sounds silly, but once you get used to it, it's pretty fun to use. And the other thing that I really like about this car are the seats. It comes stock, I think, with the Recaro Alcantara seats, and they really hug you well without kind of being like the RS, where you felt as if you gained 10 pounds, they weren't going to fit you anymore. It really is a good seat. And then the other thing, of course, is it is slightly older than Bill's car, but it still has some of the nice creature comforts like Apple CarPlay. There's a couple race settings that you can set up when you're at the track. So really, I think it's pretty tricked out for a 2017.
Yeah, I agree. Some of the cool little features, and Kelly kind of touched on this, if you're not familiar with the heads-up display, the instrument cluster on this is kind of a mixture of analog with some digital gauges, but there's actually a color display that projects up onto your windshield. So when you're driving, you can just keep your eyes on the road and you can still see RPM, speed, kind of all those things. So that's pretty cool. The other thing that she mentioned too, and we actually haven't played with this a ton yet, but this does have the ability to monitor your track times and actually record your track laps. So it's actually got cameras that can be turned on when you're at the racetrack, and it'll film your whole lap. So that's super cool, and that is something that the Mach 1 doesn't have. So, you know, those are some of the nice features of the ZL1. What are some things that you're not a huge fan of?
I will say, although it's better than the RS, going over bumps in this car kind of sucks. Driving it through neighborhoods where they'll have rain gutters and things like that, you scrape a lot, or you have to just take your time and go over really slow, which, you know, using it as your daily, that's kind of a big drawback to me. Other things that I don't enjoy, I don't know. I mean, the interior is really nice. I love the cooled seats too.
Got my whole cooled seats on right now.
Yeah.
video of this later, is the suspension on the ZL1, even though it's not the 1LE, is super stiff. And driving behind her, near our house, there's a steep curve, and you'll actually see it pick up the inside rear tire by like a couple feet off the ground, and then it kind of pops back down. And when you're in the car, you feel that it feels kind of odd. It's just the suspension is super stiff. But with that, you know, it is planted. So I've noticed, you know, she keeps mentioning her RS. So Kelly had a Focus RS before she had this, and that was a super stiff car. It was fun, but it was even more racier feeling, if you could believe it, than the ZL1. But the big thing with this is it is planted. So although it's stiff, you know, she can hop in it. This is her first car with over 600 horsepower, probably over 400 horsepower.
Yeah.
So this is a huge jump, and she can get in it and really romp on it. And the traction control is set up right to where it kind of keeps you safe. So this is a car that anyone can get in, and they can have fast and, you know, drive fast and have fun with, even if it's the manual transmission, which this one is.
So after 5 months of waiting, you've gotten your Mach 1.
Yes.
What are your impressions driving it?
So I've had other Mustangs before, and I forgot how much I like the Coyote motor. I mean, it just wants to like rev and rev and rev. I mean, just, you know, I'm still in the braking period, so I'm going easy on it to some extent, but it's just, I just love this motor. I mean, the LT4 in the Camaro is really nice because you just have that torque everywhere, and you don't have that in the Coyote. But this is just a car that you just want to, like, when you go get groceries or go to get gas, like, you find yourself getting on it because it's just fun. So that's one of the things I like. I'm also kind of like to geek out at all the just different, like, cool, like, tech stuff and everything in here. The LCD dash is super cool. The selectable modes for the exhaust, I can have this thing set up so that in the morning when I go to work, I can have it in quiet mode between certain times so I don't piss off the neighbors, which is awesome.
Yeah, and that's something that I definitely appreciate about it. But yeah, you touched on your dash cluster. That's one of the big things, I think, with the newer cars, where you can customize your entire dash to exactly what you want. Mine just has kind of the normal gauges, which, although I like them, there's no changing it for me. Whereas here, you can set up your dash exactly how you want it.
Yeah, and you can do, in both cars, you can do some cool things with the ambient colors, which is a ton of fun.
Yeah.
So Kelly, you have yours set to pink, right?
Mine is set to pink right now, yes, but who knows, if the mood strikes, it might change.
So that Coyote. Woo. I think we only have it in normal mode, so we'll pop it up into track mode so you can see if you can hear a difference inside the car. So yeah, it was normal. So now we're gonna go to track mode. A little bit deeper tone. Unfortunately, we have a car in front of us now, but
you can really hear that it does have that very signature Mustang sound,
yes,
which I will say, it's tough to beat.
Yeah, and it's, I mean, I'll be honest, it's not for everyone. I mean, I'm a sucker for the way the LS and LT cars sound. They've got that kind of muscle car sound. With these, I feel like if you open up the exhaust too much, it gets a little bit raspy, but it's pretty nice, honestly, from the factory in the Mach 1, and that's something that my 2013 didn't have. I think Ford spent more time getting this thing dialed from the factory. So I had a 2013 track pack car, but this, just the suspension, having the IRS, way better. Over bumps, it doesn't pick up that inside wheel like Kelly's does, so when you do go over harsh bumps, you don't kind of get bounced around inside the car. Suspension's probably a little bit less racy, and maybe that'll translate to not quite as quick of lap times, but that will have to be seen. But just as a daily, for me, this is pretty much perfect. And the other thing that I really enjoy about this car is the fact that this Coyote motor is so capable. It used to be you had to have an LS if you wanted to add a turbo or superchargers and make a ton of power, but anymore, the Coyote is kind of a better platform to start with. These things will make 750 wheel horsepower all day without any major considerations towards longevity. So that's something that is super cool. You're not going to get that in a base Camaro or really any other car. So as we find a good place to turn around, I'm trying to think, and again, I've only had this car for a week. Kelly, how long have you had your Camaro for?
Probably about 4 months at this point.
Okay, so you've had a lot more time to sit and think about the things that you do like and you don't like, whereas I'm just kind of getting used to this. Right off the bat, there's only like little minor things that I'm not a huge fan of, and I think it's par for the course with any 2021 vehicle. So this has the lane departure kind of assist, and that's fine. I mean, some people I guess need that, and they don't pay attention to the road as much as they should. But I like to be able to turn that off, and you actually can't do that in this car, or at least I haven't found out how to yet.
Oh, that reminds me, the other thing that I dislike about my car.
What's that?
Skip shift.
Oh, yes.
Oh,
okay.
it's the worst.
Yes. So for people who aren't familiar, GM, in a way to try and save fuel economy, has a feature where if you're not hard on the gas, it will skip from first to fourth gear. So as you go to slide it back in a second, it'll actually push you over into fourth gear. And you can go in, I believe, a tuner can go in and turn that off. There's also a little piece that you can plug in. You have to jack the car up, go underneath the transmission. It's not difficult. You can turn that off, but from the factory, even if you're in track mode, I think it'll still have the skip shift, which is silly.
Yeah, so I mean, you can get around that by kind of getting on it or waiting to shift to second until after 20 miles an hour. But every once in a while, you just won't be paying attention, and it'll just slide you right into fourth, and then you'll just lug it. And
right.
It's pretty annoying. Not quite as annoying as being on canyon roads with the wheel. Every time you kind of get out of your lane, which here we're doing a lot because there are some cyclists, we're trying to give them room, and so every time you kind of get over the lane a little bit, it just gives you a little shake to kind of, I guess, wake you up if that's not what you meant to do.
Sometimes you just have to be quiet and listen to it.
It is pretty fun.
What do you think about the resonator delete H-pipe that I added? Can you tell the difference?
I can't yet, but I wasn't in your car that much before.
Yeah.
Do you notice anything? Or?
I do. I do notice a difference. It's not a ton. Again, if I would have went with an X-pipe, you would have gotten a lot more raspy sound. But I don't like that the Coyote is very raspy inherently, so I was trying to do what I could. Both of our cars come with the active exhaust, so that's one thing. You know, a lot of times you buy like a muscle car and the first thing you do is you put a catback on it. That's not something that either of us, I don't think, want to do because you pay for that option. Actually, no, you know what? I think our cars both came with it from the factory, so you don't have to pay for it. But on a regular GT or probably on a Camaro SS, you would have to upgrade to get that active exhaust, and that just gives you different modes. So there's a car in front of me right now. I'm going to slow down. I'm going to put it into quiet mode, and you are not going to be able to hear this thing. Okay, so we've got the car in quiet mode right now. I've got someone in front of me, so I'm not going to be able to get on it as much as when I was going uphill, but really, you can't hear the car. You probably hear the AC and the air-conditioned seats more than you hear the exhaust right now. But that's nice, because in the morning, you can start the car up in your garage, you can drive through your neighborhood, you're not going to piss anybody off. If you're out driving and you want to have some fun on some back roads, but you also don't want to draw too much attention to yourself, that's another great option. This car has quiet mode. Yours, it'll go down to touring.
Touring, so it's not exactly as quiet as this one, but it does get a little quieter, which is nice, again, for a daily driver where you're taking it to work in the morning. Both of us get up pretty early, and we do have elderly neighbors, so it is, not the biggest car person perk, I would say, but just a neighborhood person perk.
Yeah, for sure. And the other thing I'll try and show you too is, unlike Kelly's car, in this car, when you switch between the modes, it changes your dash. So in normal mode, you've got RPMs kind of in your standard sort of, semicircular type range. You've got, just your standard normal everyday kind of car settings. As you flip it into Sport Plus, into track or the drag mode, you get a linear tack, and it makes it easier to kind of see exactly where the RPMs are, which is nice. You can also go in and configure the gauges, so I actually haven't figured this out. Trying to go through all the new settings on a new car be daunting, but Yeah, you can go through and actually configure the gauges and set what's called My Mode. And then by My Mode, you can have it set up so the steering feels a certain way, the exhaust is a certain way, the gauges are a certain way. You can select between the trip meter, you can put air-fuel ratio up there. I mean, there's just so many things that you can do with the totally stock dash. Back in the day, you would put like a gauge pod up somewhere. You don't have to do that anymore. So that's pretty cool too. Okay, so to wrap up this video, as I was going through and editing roughly the 20 minutes of footage, I started to realize some common themes. So for me, I think I really enjoy what makes the Mach 1 a good daily driver. So it's all the little creature comforts to me that I enjoy. I can forgo having all that extra horsepower in something I drive every day because I know that down the road, I'm gonna modify it and it's gonna make a lot more horsepower. But for Kelly, I think she enjoys more of the track-oriented kind of driving experience and more of the power. Do you think it's a fair assessment?
I think so. I think the driving experience to me is, you know, part of the fun, and I also am probably not the one that's going to have to modify my car.
Yeah, that's a good thing to say though, because some people just want to get their car right out of the box and have it be great. And I think if you're one of those people, the ZL1's fantastic. You don't really need to do anything to this car for it to be properly fast and fun around a track. And speaking of tracks, we were all set up to do some roll racing here in a couple weeks, but unfortunately the track had to cancel that event, so we have to push that off. But that's okay. I still only have about 600 miles on my car, so I still need to break it in. Once it's broken though, trust me, we are gonna have some head-to-head racing. Kelly is definitely set up again to kick my butt.
Yep.
But nonetheless, we're gonna give it a shot in the Mach 1. I think I'll have a better chance around the track, but certainly in a straight line, she'll probably win. But either way, you will see that in future videos when we film, probably next, some roll racing, some drag racing in a future episode of Truck and Roll. Thanks for watching, guys.